Just keep ignoring him. I may look down at the paper every once in a while. You can, instead of looking at my eyes at that point, you can look at my bald spot.
Yeah.
We are speeding.
I'll pick my nose.
Okay, exactly. We're going to start with the real tough stuff. So if you could say and spell your first and last name and let us know your title here at Trinity College.
Sure, I'm Bryan Adams, B-R-Y-A-N, A-D-A-M-S. I'm the Director of Systems and Networking.
What'd you have for breakfast?
I enjoy coffee most days for breakfast.
Awesome. All right, he's under the program. He passed the first test. I may revisit some of these questions. It's not that you didn't answer it right. Just sometimes I go back for a longer or shorter bite, but initially just let it all out and tell me what you're thinking. So what we're looking to know now is, like, what were your initial fears or your concerns when you first heard about the project?
My initial fears and concerns about the project were primarily around timing. The speed with which this project looks like it's going to come to fruition is so accelerated that getting all the planning in line that we would need to have ready before go time is a relatively monumental task.
Pause it just 1 second. Brian, do me a favor, grab the back of your jacket, pull it down.
You can see the back of my jacket?
I have 360-degree view.
So what are you looking for? Getting this not to stretch out on the table?
Not to hump up on your back.
Oh, okay. Is that good?
Yeah, and hang on.
You want your collar up or down?
I have no idea what it's doing.
Here, you know what? I think
I
that's...
wasn't sure it was well, for a moment you look like Dan Rather walking through Baghdad with his eyes out.
It's been like a war zone. Kirchhoff stepped on campus and we haven't had a moment's rest.
We are speeding again. So.
Okay. So we were talking about some of the fears and concerns. As Director of Networking, right?
Director of Systems and Networking, so all the infrastructure, servers, networking components, physical topology across campus, the systems that run temperature controls, access control, etc., the infrastructure.
So let's...
I'm sorry, Steve, I'm going to do one more thing. Do me a favor, this may sound crazy. Rub your hands together like this. This is not a joke. And then wipe around your eyes on your forehead, and it'll help take some of the... It's kind of warm in here.
There you go.
Cameras make everybody look a little damp, so there's damp and then there's healthy.
There we go.
One more time, especially on the end of your nose, underneath this eye, on the. There you go. You got it. Fantastic. Thank you.
Perfect. Good?
Good.
Speed. Okay. So when you talk about all those things that are in line, specifically, what, because of the accelerated project, what is it from where you sit that makes it challenging with all that infrastructure?
Given that so many resources ride on the data network on our campus and probably other campuses, all of the conduit, pathways, even physical material has to be laid out at the beginning so that we can control all those or provide resources for all those other systems to happen. Unlike other projects, we have to have that all done in our minds and on paper before a real building comes up, which means all the planning is front-loaded.
And traditionally, if a building were being built the old-fashioned way, that wouldn't be as much of a concern, right?
When buildings we've worked on, and there have been a number of them on this campus, were built in a more traditional way, the schedule was always accelerated to some degree, but you had a longer timeline in which to rearrange those resources. You could look inside a wall as it was roughed in but not closed and make some last-minute adjustments. In this case, that's not possible.
Are there any benefits to that sort of forced pre-planning, that anything that you can think of that's a tangible benefit that helps or that's conducive to the accelerated process?
As difficult as it is for me to hear myself say this, as difficult as it is for me to hear myself say this, the increased pressure on upfront planning actually may serve to get the job done with less organizational difficulty as time goes on.
That's neat. Did the developer, with a developer-led project, has working with them been different than other projects that you've been involved with on campus? I kind of just answered that, but it's probably better to say about, maybe I should ask you this. What can you say about the development team and your experience so far working with them in this early stage?
It's been a very different experience working with this particular team, possibly because of who they are, but also possibly because of the accelerated timeline. Given that so much work has to happen in such a short period of time, there is no way to get it done but to cooperate. And since both sides of the equation know that you have to cooperate to succeed, the environment has been very, well, cooperative.
Neat. And any aha moments along that when you suddenly realize, like at first, you know, holy crap, this is accelerated, this is different, this is hard to get going now. Any moment along where you were like, oh, wait a minute. You kind of referenced that it might end up, you know, forcing a hand for some efficiencies, but any stories about that you might be able to share?
Frequently in building projects, the effort to coordinate with the construction group as well as the architect meets with some friction at the point when resources have to be fit into a architectural vision. In this case, because there is no time for that sort of disagreement, the reaction from the architects and the builders has been much more cooperative in the flavor of, we don't have time to mess with this, let's find the common ground and move forward.
That's interesting. Maybe stepping out of your daily realm, but what are your impressions so far of a modular building method when you think about it coming to Trinity? And you hear the word modular, you know, what is it that kind of, what are your big impressions there?
These are modular buildings, and it's my hope and belief that that won't be known to any of the residents going forward. I actually have a high opinion of factory-built structures. They can be built in controlled environments. There are reasons that there are economies that are enjoyed by both parties, and there are quality structures that don't squeak and don't move. There are negative opinions about modular buildings. From my point of view, the single largest negative at this point is the very load it produces on us as an organization to do all the planning and preparation to support a building that does not exist at this point, or at least doesn't exist on our footprint.
And what do you see as that, so we kind of like tag that as
Hold on a second, Steve.
you know,
Where are those voices coming from?
all right. We'll tell you the story later. So, so you've got, so we kind of identified, there's that negative part that it's just so front loaded with this planning that the onus is on you. Probably more than any other buddy else involved with this to get it right conceptually. What do you see as the benefit, the bonus, the payback for that difficulty of all this pre-planning now?
You said that in the effort to plan this all up front, the onus for getting it right is on us. And I think those are fighting words. The onus is on all of us because a failure here is a failure across the board. It is very difficult to fit in at a tough time in our schedule. It's very difficult to fit in without the flow we're used to from a budget and program control point of view. But you could use the analogy of pulling a Band-Aid off quickly. This is painful no matter how you do it. This pain happening more quickly and hopefully passing more quickly might well be easier to sustain over a year.
Okay, good. I guess this is a good question. I mean, how would you describe your feelings of anticipation about when you get to the end of this? That rosy, all right, we're done.
The rosiest thing I can say about my feelings of anticipation is that I am anxiously awaiting the time when I can say this is done.
Any benefit that it's going to be sooner rather than later than if it were traditional construction, or are you still kind of, you got a sense you got your foot in both camps, kind of? You've done it the other way.
Given the modular nature of these buildings and the fact that most of the architectural planning and approval at senior levels is already done, we are on the downhill side of all of the political maneuverings that stand between getting a building completed. That, as we have said, has accelerated the timeline to get the job done and has front-loaded all of our planning load right up front. That causes us to work harder to prepare for every meeting, to work harder between meetings to react to changes quickly and to get the ball rolling in the right direction. The good news is that there will be fewer meetings as a result, and the end will come sooner rather than later. The bad news is, until the end comes, I will be suspending my disbelief that this will work as planned and as designed until I see it happen. Most nuts and bolts people are anxious to see something real and something completed before they feel any sense of ease and can rest.
You know, it's neat. I'm jumping back earlier when you're talking about how your preconceived notion of having a factory-built thing, this modular concept, as being a positive thing, because there's the controlled environment, my guess. I'm wondering, do you think that's because of your background with networking, and you're going to receive most of what you use in your day, whether it's computers or whether it's cables or whether it's connections? Is there something in that that's attractive, that most of what you work with on a daily basis is something that was assembled elsewhere and you just manage it? Kind of a weird question, but
you may well talk to a lot of different people here at Trinity about this project, and they'll all come from a different place. I'm IT, and I'm systems and networking. And as a result, I'm exactly that kind of boring, detail-focused process person who you'd expect me to be. As a result, a modular structure, a thing that is ordered and planned and duplicates itself, is attractive to me. I can work smarter and multiply those intelligent decisions, not my intelligent decisions, but those that come from the organization, by the number of times I duplicate a system. So there's something very attractive about that. The downside, of course, is personalization. People want an environment that is not a factory of boxes. I don't think this will be that, but in my case, I'm very pleased that I can plan this thing out ahead of time, knowing that I can count on whatever is true in each townhouse in our case will be true in the next one and the next one and the next one. If I'm going to do all this work, I'd like to duplicate it.
That's cool. Well, that makes sense. I think Kirchhoff does too. How do you think it'll impact the campus? I guess we're step out of the IT realm now, but how do you think? I still haven't looked at that spot where it goes. I know this room. It's been years since I've been on this campus, but what are your feelings as somebody who was a student here and now someone who's a professional? What's the impact of this project going to have on the campus?
I've been at Trinity for a long time, first as a student and then as an employee, and I'm hoping someday they let me leave. I've seen a lot of things happen. A number of buildings have come up in my time here, and I've seen the campus change its complexion in terms of how people access the campus and where the centers of activity are. This is another case where we're building a large magnet in a different area of campus, and it will change where people congregate. That's an important change. This particular part of campus has been a project in the making. We've done a lot of demolition in the last couple of years, and I think the campus is looking to see what's coming next. That's a big positive. Again, from an IT point of view, the notion that this is something of a clean slate and I can get my undergrounds in place as I need them to be for this piece of the project and for the future, and stop having to work quite so hard to get around historical structures that are everywhere else, is a benefit. It's also a burden in that the planning here has not potential, but the fact that it will impact every other decision that happens in that side of campus for the future. So whoever comes after me will have to either benefit from or suffer from the way we plan the underground system to service this part of campus.
Interesting. Did Trinity does the college really need this? Is this something?
Trinity College is a unique place. It's growing in different ways, possibly not in terms of general enrollment, but certainly the way that we service the needs of our students. After all, that's why we're here. I think we do need new housing. I think that's been identified by our board and our leadership, and this is the way that they're choosing to do that right now. So I think clearly, as a good soldier, this is needed. I believe it, and I think this will satisfy that need. I can't speak to the rest of the future. There are other things coming behind this. I believe this area needs further development, and I think that's in the vision of the people who are looking to do this. So I can't say that I'm privy to all those high-level decisions. I can say that I believe that this resource, this area that we have, more than likely will be utilized to meet the needs that are defined by the group that are defining the needs.
Gotcha. Now, goes into the nebulous world, sort of, but there's probably a question I should be asking. I'm not smart enough to ask. From your point of view, what haven't we talked about that's important in this planning? And this goes back, whether it's specific to you or whether it's thinking of as a student, I would like that. But what's something that we might not have mentioned, something I didn't ask you that you see as being, something that's key to this project?
There are always unknowns at the beginning of any project, and yet you need to pretend you know those things to move forward. Things like program decisions. What's going to happen here? Who's going to sit in this location? What sort of activities are going to happen? You build a plan, and you hang your hat on it, and you move forward. But that plan, as all plans do, will change over time, and the program needs will change as you discover that you need to do something else. I think it's important, and I try to keep this in mind, that we build all of the access ways and the pathways and a nimble structure that we can move with in the future. Because Trinity is going to be here for a long time, and this location needs to be able to adjust its structure as our needs change. I don't mean we're going to bend the building. I do mean, however, that when we start saying this building might be a campus center for some other purpose, or we have meetings where we expected to have smaller gathering points, we need to be able to do that. Planning for versatility is actually the place that I think we need to focus more here on.
How about in acquisition of signal for these? I'm just kind of thinking of kids today, they're wired, baby, and whether they got an iPad, a phone, or a laptop. How are you, and it goes back to the first question kind of, but in the building space and maybe outside the building space, what kind of access to a wireless network are these kids going to have?
The network topology here probably is very similar to most other institutions. It's growing wildly every year. And the adoption, the craze, the addiction to wireless is so strong that people will universally choose to use it, even though the speeds are not comparable to the wired ports, which are ubiquitous. That's fine. We have to meet people where they are, and that growth is going to continue. We will not be able to come back into this space later and add more conduit, we can add more material in the conduit we have, and we can add devices, but having the raw pathways in order to adjust as needs change and as systems change is terribly important. All students inside their townhouse will certainly have access to our campus wireless network, and it is my hope that we can provide a relatively open area, a relatively complete coverage posture for the open areas in that campus. Everybody's carrying a cell phone and soon a tablet and a laptop, and they want to use them anywhere.
It's funny, I cheat to a wired signal anytime I can. Mm-hmm. But I'm an old guy with gray hair. Any surprises along the way? We did an aha moment kind of on the positive. Any other surprises, whether they're positive, neutral, or negative?
From my point of view, we're now at the beginning of this process. Others have been working for a number of years on these plans and with the administration, and they probably feel like they've been through this for quite some time. But from the point of view of infrastructure, systems, and networking, we're really at the beginning point. We've had a few meetings, we have laid out our plans as best as we can, and we have, I think, a good relationship at this point, at least to know we're communicating well about those needs. But it's not really been happening in my mind for long enough to have the ability to look back in time and say, what have I learned over this time? I feel like at this point I'm still at the beginning.
Okay. And Mid-August rolls around. Things are clicking.
Mhm.
Things are working. How psyched are you?
You ask how psyched I'll be as the process moves forward. That's an interesting question. I hate to be an Eeyore, but my excitement is greatly dampened by my fear and loathing of more work. There's a lot to do. And as the next stage comes up and more of my resources need to be brought to bear here, I'm concerned about how I'll fit this in with other projects. As a result, I'm putting as much focus as I can on the planning at this stage. But but as the building starts to arrive, as the foundation is produced and we think about those next pieces happening, I'm going to be very concerned that the work that has to happen after the initial assembly is on rails. Obviously, you can't pull wires into a modular structure until it is assembled. It just doesn't work that way. And so you have to wait until those structures are stacked and assembled, and then you have to hurry and get in all the material, get it terminated, get it tested, and get the equipment on the far end of it lit up and talking to its support. That gives me some concern, and I'll say it, a couple of nightmares.
I never thought of that onus on you. I could see where you, in particular to all the other folks that we're going to talk to today, that there's that pressure, that hot breath on your neck, like, can't do anything, can't do anything, can't do anything, go! So I can see that. Now how about to flip it and to take the Eeyore hat off for a second and maybe go back, maybe touch on what you already spoke of, kind of the factory assembled and quality control benefits. But I guess the last thing I'll ask you is any tangible benefit that you're looking at this project besides that pre-planning phase and benefit of that importance of really researching and digesting it in a conceptual pattern before it's built. Any other positive thing you could say about it?
From the point of view of infrastructure, at any organization where you're talking to somebody like me who is concerned with how to keep the rails healthy and running for whatever the needs are, and those needs will always increase. Anytime you can build something new, you get a chance to cover some ground that will otherwise have to be made up in a catch-up model later. So I do get the ability here to expand the footprint of my campus network into an area where it was much less robust before. That's a great benefit. It prepares me for the next work that comes, and that is a benefit. I don't know how much that translates to other campuses, depending on where people are growing. They may be growing in an area that's already built and replacing buildings on a footprint that's already there. But for us in this case, I have only limited and backbone type communications through that region. I'll now be distributing from a new location, which is a mechanical benefit.
Good.
You probably heard it.
Yeah.
Track drove through.
Yeah, that's good. I think we were clear in that last sentence was probably the valuable nugget.
Okay.
Brian,
Flip the collar and pretend that we're in the war zone and those are tanks coming through.
Brian, I've kind of added some questions and then changed some of these questions we have before us. Are there any things I should revisit or anything you want to add?
No, I think you nailed it. I think everything's good.
Okay. Last question. What are you going to have for lunch? No, we're good. I think that's great. Thank you very much for your time. And